Hi everyone, today I'll be doing my first ever book tag, which is the A to Z Hot or Not book tag. This tag was made by a booktuber called Another Bibliophile Reads, so all credit goes to him for this tag. I was not specifically tagged to do this, but I saw this tag doing the rounds on BookTube and thought it might be fun. So basically there's a prompt for every letter of the alphabet and you have to say whether it's hot or not and why. I've got my phone here with all the prompts. So without further ado, let's begin. A is for audiobooks, and audiobooks are hot. As a vision impaired person, I have a particular appreciation for audiobooks because they make books visible for people who are blind or visually impaired and who cannot read print easily. And I don't listen to them as much anymore, but when I was little especially, I listened to them a lot at night time when I was in bed. Honestly, the main reason I kind of stopped listening to them as much is because I think a lot in bed, and I started thinking a lot in bed, and so I just kind of like doing that more. I don't know. Audiobooks are important because they provide an alternate medium for those for whom physical books are, for whatever reason, not as accessible, whether that's vision impairment, blindness, or even stuff like dyslexia, which makes reading printed books difficult. B is for Bildungsroman, which is a term I hadn't heard before this, which is apparently dealing with formative years or like a coming of age type story. And yeah, I think that's hot. Yeah, I probably read a bunch of stories like this without really thinking about them as being those types of stories, but I think they are good stories just thinking about that. C is for children's books, and children's books are hot. Even as an adult, I enjoy reading the occasional children's book, whether it's just for fun or because I need some sort of silly shenanigans in these sometimes depressing and troubling times, because you just need a laugh, and sometimes they really are meaningful and insightful even as an adult. Besides which, children's books are also important because reading is an important thing for children to learn to do, and any books that can make them keen about reading are good and important to help them develop and build that habit and interest. D is for digital, so digital books, and digital books are not, and this is something I feel very strongly about because I feel very strongly about the preservation of physical media and owning what you buy, actually owning your stuff, not just owning access to it until whatever company is distributing the media decides to pull the plug. I will never own a Kindle in my life, I swear, because when you buy something digitally, whether that's an ebook or a digital video game or like a song off of iTunes, you're not actually buying the thing or owning the thing. You are buying a license to access the thing. You are paying for permission to access the thing, and that permission can be revoked at any time. In fact, a few years ago, Microsoft faced this drama when they closed their own ebook store, and all of the people who had bought their ebooks would lose access to those books. Fortunately, Microsoft generously decided to refund them, but let's say if Amazon discontinued their Kindle and everybody who owned a Kindle lost access to all of their Kindle books, and the Kindle itself was essentially relegated to being a expensive paperweight, I don't think those people would be so lucky somehow, and they certainly wouldn't be able to get a refund for the defunct, useless paperweight of a Kindle device itself. And yeah, so I really hate how everything's being subscription service these days and how people are willingly getting on board with not owning stuff that they are paying for. I would even support going to a library over buying a digital book, because if I borrow a physical book from a library, I am still showing that there is demand for physical books and for libraries to have them and own them and distribute them. So even though physical books are more expensive than digital books, I will still buy them over digital books, even though it might not be financially a better decision, because at least nobody can take them from me. Once I buy a book, it's mine. No one is going to be able to reach into my house and take it from me if that publisher decides to stop printing that book, if the local government decides to ban that book from libraries. There's a quote from Stephen King, apparently, that basically says, if someone bans a book from your local library, get thee to a bookstore right now and find whatever the heck it is that they don't want you to read. Wiser words have seldom been spoken. And before I move on, you might be thinking, well, Limitless, you were for audiobooks before, and audiobooks are digital. And to that, I say, you can have physical audiobooks too. To all the young'uns who don't know what the heck is in this case, this is called a CD, a compact disc. This is what we had when I was little. So yeah, and Amazon still sells these. When you go on Amazon and you find a book on Amazon, and you can find the different formats, paperback, hardback, Kindle, a lot of the time I see audio CD as an option. And if I haven't shown my age enough, before we had audio CDs, we had these bad boys. Leave a comment if you know what this is, or even better, if you still own some of these yourself. This is an audio cassette. And luckily, I still have a stereo back there, you probably can't see it, that my mum gave me that is still able to play these audio CDs and cassettes, and is also a radio. So even though I don't really use it much, because like everybody else, a lot of these things are, like a lot of music, for example, you can find on YouTube and Spotify, I am never going to get rid of these. A while ago, somebody did convince me to get rid of a lot of my tape collection. I really, really regret doing that. I've always regretted doing that. Unfortunately, the only ones that survived that purge were the ones that were at my other house, my mum's house. But I'm glad I still have the ones that I have. I'm glad I still have all of my audio CDs. They are not going anywhere. So, tangent over, but this is something that I feel very strongly about. Own what you buy, people. I will never have a subscription service, no Netflix, no Audible, none of that rubbish. Say no to subscriptions, own what you buy. Whether it's books, music, games, whatever. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled book tag. E is for experimental. So I guess books that are in a non-traditional format. I think that the best example that I have that I've read and that I own is the Illuminae Files by J. Christoph, which are in a multimedia format. And yeah, these are hot. I like unique books in unique formats that are quirky and fun and interesting to read. F is for fantasy, and this one kind of depends. High fantasy, no. Urban fantasy, yes. A lot of high fantasy tends to feel really samey to me, because it's the same kind of feeling, the same kind of tropes. So I'm really picky about high fantasy, because it almost feels like when I'm looking at them at the bookshop, they all blend into one another, and so it's like I could just pick one of these and I've basically read all of the rest of them, because I know how the rest of them are going to play out. I know what kind of tropes and things and events and enemies and whatnot are going to be in them. But urban fantasy I enjoy a lot more. G is for graphic novel, and graphic novels are hot. I do read a lot of graphic novels and manga, and like with audiobooks, these provide another format, another medium by which those who typically do not really enjoy reading or struggle with reading conventional textbooks might be able to pick up a book and enjoy it, and can be a gateway into reading. This is definitely a bit of a debate in book and reading circles, but I am very much of the belief that graphic novels are still books. They still count as books, because they are an accessibility thing again. H is for horror, and for me it's mostly not, except for like Stephen King perhaps. I don't know, I just don't really get the urge to pick up a lot of horror, but I do really like Stephen King. So I guess he is the one exception to that. Though I probably have read other horror stuff by other authors and liked it, but yeah, it's just not a genre that I really gravitate towards overall. I is for inspirational, and these are not. I don't get it. I mean, if you've seen my review of The Midnight Library, you know how I felt about that. It was preachy, and a lot of that inspirational stuff, whether it's books or, you know, the Instagram quotes, aesthetic quotes, all that stuff, just feels preachy and fake to me. Like, if I'm inspired by something, it's because I came to that conclusion myself, not because I was preached to by a book. Books can be inspirational indirectly, but if you're just whamming it home to me, it's really hitting me over the head with your inspirational jargon message, it's just not gonna land. J is for journalism, and for this I'm going to say not just because it's probably not something that I read much of. I tend to read more fiction than non-fiction. I mean, I do get it, it is important, but yeah, it's just not something I guess I read a lot. Maybe I should read more, but... K is for Kitsch, which is like popular books, I guess, and that's not for me. I don't read a book just because it's popular. I read a book because I'm interested in it, and if it just happens to be a popular book, then good for the author, I guess. L is for library, and I think libraries are hot. Even though I don't visit them much, I did used to at one point, and I do think libraries are important. They make books accessible to people who may not be able to afford to buy books themselves, and they provide a lot of other resources for people who may be in need of them. M is for mystery, and I think mysteries are hot. I do like a good mystery book, whether that's detective, murder mysteries, or other books with some sort of mystery element to them. N is for non-fiction, and I think non-fiction is hot. Even though I don't read a lot of it, I do read some of it, mainly maths books. That's not surprising to anybody. But even the non-maths, non-fiction books I read tend to be good and interesting. For example, last year I read the Pax Britannica trilogy by Jan Morris, which was a trilogy of books documenting, or I guess recounting, the highs and lows of the British Empire from its rise to its decline. And that definitely opened my eyes to a lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly of the British Empire. What they did that was good, and what they did that was not so good. And yeah, I think that was definitely something that I enjoyed reading. And like I said, I learned quite a bit from it about stuff that I'd sort of heard about, names that I've heard about, but didn't really know what they were or what they were related to or where they were or anything. So yeah. O is for Omnibus, which is a collection of books in a single volume, and they are hot. I definitely own quite a few of those. And yeah, it's good to have a lot of books collected in one place, and they're probably, better value than buying the books separately, for example. So yeah, not much else to say about that. P is for poetry, and that's a not for me. I just don't really read much poetry, and I'm not really interested in reading poetry or reading any more poetry. Q is for quests, and they're a common thing in high fantasy, which I already said was a not. But if it's something like Percy Jackson, like quests are an integral part of the plot of Percy Jackson, and yeah, that they're good there. So I guess this is another sort of it depends, I guess, situation. R is for romance, and once again, this is it depends, because if it's done well, if it's healthy, then good. But a lot of the things that a lot of romance books, like books that are specifically in the romance genre, do is romanticizing gross, toxic behaviors, like really possessive behaviors, all that sort of thing, that would be a major red flag in real life, and it would have me running for the hills if my partner were to do that. So yeah, if it's done in a healthy way, and that's not to say that romance books or storylines can't have drama, but it's when these problematic behaviors are in these books and they're not questioned or, shown to be problematic, when they are romanticized, when the other person actually find these things hot, and the author isn't doing anything to portray these behaviors in the problematic, toxic light that they should be shown in. That's not so good. S is for science fiction, and that is hot. That is probably one of the main genres that I read and consistently enjoy. I am not as picky about like I am with fantasy. T is for translation, so books that were originally written and published in a different language and have been translated, and that is hot because I definitely read a lot of books that have been translated, whether it's manga that was originally in Japanese or other Japanese fiction like Before the Coffee Gets Cold or 1Q84, which I'm currently reading, or books that were written in other languages like Jonas Jonasson, who is Swedish, I think. I like his books, for example. So yeah, translation is good. It makes books that would otherwise not be accessible to people in whatever language you speak, whatever language is your primary language, accessible to you. It just expands the whole set of books that you can read. I mean, how can that be a bad thing, right? U is for Ubermensch, which is the Superman, like the guy that does everything. And this is a not. I mean, as a role player, there's a reason why we don't like Mary Sue characters. If you don't know what a Mary Sue is, it is essentially this: the character that is perfect and flawless and can do everything, and nobody can say a bad word about them. And nobody likes to play with a Mary Sue because you can never stack up to them. And so Ubermensch characters / Mary Sues, they're not relatable. You're always going to feel inferior to them, or not able to relate to them because, well, they're able to do everything and can't not do anything, can't fail, can't be flawed, can't be questioned, can't do anything wrong. There are cases where something like this can be done right. For example, a bored god type character, where you have like a godly character who can do everything but is just bored with it because there's not a thing that he can't do and he doesn't feel challenged or like there's anything meaningful in his life because there's nothing to overcome. But that is a rare thing. V is for Victorian, so books that are written in the Victorian era. And yeah, these are hot. And also books that are set in the Victorian era, even if they're not written there, also hot. Because I really like the Victorian era, and it's definitely one of my favourite eras to read about. And I'm also a big steampunk fan. Admittedly, I haven't read many actual Victorian era books other than like Sherlock Holmes and Dracula, because I don't really read a lot of classics, but I enjoyed those. So yeah, I probably would enjoy more actual Victorian fiction. W is for westerns, so cowboys and whatnot. And this is a not for me purely because I haven't really read any, I don't think. Maybe I should try one. X is for X-rated. I really hope I don't have to explain this one because just nope. All the nopes. Moving on. Y is for young adult, and this is hot. I definitely read a lot of YA. Even though I get a lot of the complaints about some of them feeling samey, a lot of the same tropes being repeated, showing up, certain problematic things, I get those criticisms, but I typically enjoy young adult fiction. And last but not least, Z is for Zeitgeist, which is spirit of the times. If it's the spirit of the times they're currently in, but spirit of other time periods, yeah, that's hot. It's interesting to read about and makes for a, different thing to read about, I guess. I don't know what else to say about that. So with that said, that's all of the prompts for the hot or not tag. because I'm still a ickle baby booktuber. I don't really know anybody else to tag in here, at least not anybody that wasn't already tagged in there. So I guess if you're watching this and you liked it, then I'm tagging you to do the book tag. All of the prompts will be in the description. One more thing I briefly like to mention, during my Phantom Thieves review video, I mentioned that I was doing a Divine Rivals review. Well, I filmed it and the audio went all wonky, and I tried to tweak it in LumaFusion, and I just couldn't salvage it to a degree that I was happy with. So what I'm going to do is wait till I've read the sequel Ruthless Vows, which I have and I will read, and then I'll review them both as a duology. So apologies for the delay on that, but I just like to mention that in case there might be somebody who might be wondering in the meantime what happened to that. Well, now you know. So with that said, as always, do lots of maths, read lots of books, and I'm sure you'll have an awesome and zany day.